Recording also. Hi everyone, I hope everyone is doing very well. So welcome to 24th of January. First of all, let me know that audio and video is clear to you or not, because now audio should be clear to you. Hi everyone, I hope everyone is doing very well. So welcome to 24th of January. I think audio is clear to everyone. Okay, good morning everyone. So it's great that the audio is clear. Okay, so with this, it's a wonderful day. So let's start the session. So welcome to 24th of January. Before I proceed towards important news of the day, Batch 2 of OGP, which is a topmost program of Insights IAS. OGP is an offline and online guidance program. Offline, if you want, you can come to Bangalore. This batch is starting in Bangalore. And if you want online guidance, you can get it from anywhere. So this batch is starting on 6th February 2025. This batch will include GS, CSAT, essay, the complete package for your UPSC examination. Okay, and if you want to know details about this course, call on the number 8069 40 52 05, or you can also scan the QR code. Now, before I move towards today's important news, a wonderful quote I have, and that says, if a plan A fails, remember there are 25 more letters. That means basically there are 26 letters. So if your first plan is not working, definitely the upcoming plans, or there might be second plan, third plan which will work. So if you're not able to clear the examination in first attempt, if you're not able to clear prelims or mains, that is not the time to give up. That is the time you start working on your goals. Because once you start working on your goals, that is the time, like for example, a failure happened. You need to find the mistakes. What were the mistakes in this examination? Work on those mistakes, and eventually you will get the intended result. Sometimes it might happen that your plan A is not working. Then you need to work on plan B. If plan B is not working, plan C. But it is not like that if your focus is plan A, then you start creating 30 plans and 40 plans. No, I'm not talking about it. I'm talking about that you are working on plan B, plan A, and you also have a plan B. If A is not working, or it did not work because of any XYZ things, then you can work on B. For example, many students who prepare for civil services examination, whatever is their main subject, they generally try to do masters in that subject. For example, if your say your optional is sociology or anthropology, or for example your optional in history, geography, economy, polity, or for that matter public administration or PSIR. So since you have to study the subject in such detail, which is almost equivalent to the master's syllabus, so many students start also doing their masters in that subject, and if they are not able to clear UPSC or any because of anything, then they also do net JRF in this, and then they can also get into academics. So this can also be your plan B. So I'm not saying that you start doing this, I'm just telling you a suggestion that many students do it, because if you are going masters through that subject which is your optional, it always helps. Okay, so anyways, moving forward. So the important news for today is Misri to visit Beijing as India-China look to revive dialogue. States yet to use 70,744 crore funds for welfare of workers. Stung by Pooja Khedkar scam, governments amend civil services exam rules. So certain rules have been changed, and it was expected because of this scam, and how loopholes in the UPSC notification or the physical disability was misused, and that is why this has come. In editorials, we'll talk about India's winning road to #EndTB. If you remember, we had covered a news yesterday about National Health Mission, which came in 2013, subsuming the rural and the urban mission. And as per that mission, we have done a huge amount of progress in tuberculosis, sickle cell anemia, maternal mortality rate, and many other numbers which we had discussed yesterday. It was yesterday's first news. So, moving forward to this editorials talk about that how can we end tuberculosis in India, and what are the major problems when it comes to TB in India, and what can be the best solution forward to what solution forward to find eliminating the TB. and we'll also talk about what is tuberculosis. So, for moving towards the first important news, Misri to visit Beijing as India-China look to revive dialogue. So, I don't know how many of you know, but Vikram Misri, who is the current foreign secretary, he was also the ambassador to China. He has also been ambassador to China, so he really understands China pretty well. It's not that he does not understand China, he understands China very well. And this meeting of Misri is happening, for example, if you see, the foreign minister was in America, around this 21st, 22nd meeting, Marco Rubio, who is the head of state, which is equivalent to the foreign minister. Head of state is like foreign minister of America. So, external affairs minister had met the foreign minister of America. He's not said foreign minister, he said head of state in America. So there were a lot of discussions. Then he also met the Quad group, and Quad discussions, everything had happened. Just imagine this was happening just after the swearing in ceremony. Now moving forward, coming to this news, now India is also talking to China at this point of time. What I'm trying to tell you is that India's cards are open. It is not something like that if we are talking to America, we will not talk to China. That is what I'm trying to tell you. So India today is talking about India's interest and India's strategic autonomy. Trump will always want that India allies with it, and India will do it till the time it is benefiting India, and America will also do it till the time it is benefiting America. Because if you see the Trump policy, it's about, it's America's first policy, making America great again. So it's good. He is from America. He needs to think about America, and that is why he's also asked more than 70,000 or 18,000 illegal immigrants which have entered from India to US. India has said that if they are illegal, we would take it back, and that is absolutely correct. Because if at one point of time we are saying that illegal migrants should not enter from Bangladesh and they should be deported back, same is the stance which we need to adopt in international affairs. It cannot be, for when the illegal migrants are coming to our India, then we are saying no, we have to deport it. But when illegal migrants from India are going to some other country, same rule will apply. This is called rule-based order. Anyways, what I'm trying to tell you is that Trump has its own policies, India has its own policies, and China has its own policies. Now, Vikram Misri would be going to China, and it's very important to meet him because the Donald Trump presidency has started, and trade with China is very high with India. Okay, so we would also need a lot of investments from China. There is no doubt about it. At the same time, we also need to have mutual trust and respect with China. That is the most important thing which Prime Minister Modi said at the 16th BRICS summit in Kazan, Russia. If you remember, we had covered that in huge detail. Okay. So this was the major thing which has happened, that Okay, we'll do that also, which you have referred. So this was the major thing which has happened, that after this BRICS summit, that Prime Minister Modi spoke about mutual trust, mutual respect, and then later on the special representative meeting happened. External Affairs Minister also met the Foreign Minister of China. Defense Minister meeting also happened with China. So a lot of meetings have happened, and now finally Vikram Misri is going there. There would be a lot of talks on visas, visa in terms of journalists and Mansarovar Yatra. So extending the relationship, but at the same time, I've always maintained you need to be cautiously optimistic with China. And secondly, it's a dragon with the forked tongue. This is a line I keep using. So we need to be smart with China. We also need to use China for our benefit, as China thinks that it can use India for China's benefit. And at the current juncture, if you see the current president of Trump, which is seeing, the first meeting he happens of Quad, his focus is Indo-Pacific. So China would require India, because China to deal with Japan and Australia, which are more threatened countries, and India is a vast geographical country and with lot of human resources and defense. China would want the relationship with India remains good and stable to counter Americans also, and America would also want that India to counter China. So India is a very important pivot in this entire geopolitical game. So India should use China or the America for its advantage rather than getting used. Okay, that is something which we need to do. So he would be Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri will visit Beijing on January 26 to 27 to revive dialogue between India and China. After a 4-year due to LSE military standoff, this was not happening. The visit follows October 21st agreement between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping. Misri, a former ambassador to Beijing, see, he was a former ambassador, I told you, from 2019 to 2021, will meet Chinese Vice Foreign Minister Sun Weidong, which is the counterpart to him, and who he also served China's ambassador to India. So both of them have served. So this when I talk about Weidong, he was Chinese ambassador to India, and Vikram Misri was Indian ambassador to China. So they understand each other's geopolitics very well. This would be a very good meeting. So talks will include political, economic, and people-to-people relation that is being mandated by the External Affairs Ministry. Some of the most important agendas would be direct flights between India and China, which was stopped after the Galwan clash. So there would be talks, if you remember, that even in October, November, December, this was continuously coming from China, that direct flight should be started, more trade should happen, because Chinese economy is slowing down and they are looking for market. And if more tariffs come from America, around 10%, 20%, 30%, if more tariff come from America, the American market will start getting closed for China, and then China would be looking for other markets, and India will become one of the most important markets for Chinese goods, and that is why they're focusing so much on trade and direct flights. Discussion will focus on visa issuance for business. See, again, business persons. Why business persons? Because they want to have more trade with India, because if the American market goes for a toss, they can at least use the Indian market. Journalists, along with easing travel restriction, Mansarovar Yatra arrangements, resuming the Mansarovar Yatra for Indian pilgrims, will be a topmost priority. Talks will address trade concerns, including reports of Chinese manufacturer. Yes, this is very important. Tunnel boring machines. Now, tunnel boring machines are very important for infrastructure creation. Now, tunnel boring machines are very important, like we are creating a lot of national highways and those, military highways, or, which BRO is making those roads towards the border areas. Now, this technology is very important, but China is withholding this technology. We very well know why they are withholding, because if Army, Navy, Air Force can reach the top, the extreme corners of the border, then we can always challenge the Chinese. Chinese have already done that, but they are not willing to give these technologies, or rather they have not said that we are not willing, but they are delaying it and some kind of blocking it. So withholding key technologies in tunnel boring machines. So there would be discussion on that also. It should get resolved. If it doesn't get resolved, probably we'll have to look for some other country. Then there is an issue which India also has of the dam which is being built on Brahmaputra river, and Bangladesh and India being lower riparian states, there are high chances of floods. For example, excess water can be flooded in the northeast states, specifically if the relation between India and China, say, goes for, goes down, or it goes for a toss, it's not working out, or there is a war happening, they can, forward this extra water, which can lead to floods in the areas of Assam and northeast. So this Brahmaputra dam which is being created on Brahmaputra, it can cause huge amount of floods and other problems in lower riparian states. So this is also one of the important discussion which should happen between both of them. So agreement included resolution for the LAC standoff and commitment to improve bilateral ties. It was followed by meetings between foreign and defense ministers of both countries. So 2025 marks the 75th anniversary of India-China diplomatic ties, with plans for dozens of events highlighted by Chinese charge d'affaires Wang Li. So 2025 is also, around 75 years of diplomatic affairs between India and China, and it is also 60 years of diplomatic relationship between India and South Korea. Okay, so India and South Korea, remember that logo was released by the South Korean president and President Murmu some days back. We had covered it. And India and China are also celebrating 75 years of diplomatic ties, 2025. So two important countries, China and South Korea. South Korea 60 years, China 75 years. So this can become a good UPSC prelims question. So trade between India and China grew by 2%, reaching to $126.6 billion in the first 11 months of 2024. So even after so much of, banning of the apps, the India-China trade continues to grow. And that is why China and American markets are also very important for India. Same way America, see, the importance of India and China is very high for America. Same way American and American market and the Chinese trade is also very important for India. So how we would be balancing is something which we need to see. China issued around 280,000 visas to Indians in 2024 who were traveling there. So border disputes, lingering issue is the border dispute at the LAC visa travel related agreements with limited progress. See, the visa issues is that certain times when the visas are given to Chinese, many of their spies and their intelligence official in the garb of journalist or businessmen enter, and they try to snoop on the, you know, on the business environment or some technology which we are trying to enhance, or the military complexes, what kind of weapons we are making. So they try to do this. So they will be showing that they are in, you know, that they are here for business, but they will have some other nefarious agendas also. So hydropower and riparian concerns and mutual distrust, this is something which we need to work upon. So Vikram Misri's visit is the right step in reviving the India-China relationship, no doubt about it. The National Security Advisor has met, the meeting has happened, Defense Minister meeting has happened, External Affairs meeting has happened. You know, after the Prime Minister Modi meeting, Chinese President Xi Jinping. So we are in the right direction, but again, be very cautious about Chinese agendas, and what happens between China and America in coming 3 to 6 months is something which we need to look very accurately and then take suggested or the important steps which the government feels correct. Okay. Now moving towards the next important news, this says states yet to use 70,744 crore. 70,744 crore. See the amount of corpus, see the amount of money. This money is still unutilized, which could have been utilized for workers and would have made their life better. So 70,744 crore funds for welfare of workers, but this money still has not been utilized. So there is a 1996 Act, and the name of the Act is Building and Other Construction Workers Regulation of Employment and Condition of Service Act 1996. Now this act gives you the power to collect cess. So states have been collecting a cess around 1 to 2%. So state boards have collected a total of cess of 1,17,507.22 crore, but out of this more than 70,000 crore funds still has not been used, but only allocated 67,669 crore for the welfare of the workers. The remaining unutilized money, it has not still been used. The unutilized amount of in the excess of 70,000 crore remains idle, raising questions of efficiency of welfare mechanism. So if the cess was collected for the welfare of workers, why it has not been spent? That is the question. And why this money is lying idle, and what steps should be taken? So cess collection, so cess is levied around 1 to 2% of the total construction cost mandated by the Act. So on the companies and the employers, this, you know, who are the owners, this cess is of 1 to 2% is applied, and this is how they had collected around the number which we have more than a lakh crore of your funds of the cess, and out of that more than 70,000 crore is still lying idle. So a total of 5.73 crore workers have registered with 36 states welfare boards as of September 2024. So despite this huge amount of cess being collected, it is still underutilized, states failing to spend on workers welfare effectively. They still are not spending on workers welfare effectively. So one of the best state which has shown, relatively it is better, Kerala has shown to be the best among these states. Rest, most of the states have not shown good numbers. For example, Maharashtra collected more than 19,000 crore over 19 years, but spent only 13,000 crores. Okay, so around 6,000 crore is still pending. Karnataka and Uttar Pradesh Karnataka spent around 8,000 crores and Uttar Pradesh spends around 7,800 crore, respectively, leaving a significant portion unspent. So in Karnataka case also, Uttar Pradesh case also, Maharashtra case also, much of the a good amount of money is still left or sitting idle, which could have been spent on the workers' welfare, which did not happen. So Kerala is a good example. It emerges an exception, but relatively better. Even Kerala is not number one, which we can say that how Kerala has done, the other states can follow. It is better than these states. So there is a need for monitoring and accountability mechanism to ensure funds are utilized effectively. Otherwise, what is the point of creating an act, collecting the cess? So much of effort is going, so much of money goes in collecting the stack. I mean to say, the entire mechanism of the government, and when this fund is collected, it is not being utilized. So workers face severe hardships during the March 2020 lockdown due to lack of welfare measures from both the center and state. Benefits such as temporary accommodation. So what benefits they should get? They should get temporary accommodation, drinking water. Latrines made under the act are not being implemented. I've hardly have seen that these kind, even what we saw at the time of COVID, that how migrant workers were suffering. Even at that point of time, the states did have the funds, but they did not implement the funds. Same as the story, it continues. Temporary accommodation needs to be given, drinking water needs to be given, latrine needs to be given, but nothing of this happens, even though when the state is sitting on such a high corpus of funds. Only states can answer why they are not doing it. This is lack of governance and not a very great approach which has been taken by the state governments. So trade unions argue that most states fail to implement the act properly, leaving workers without the access to critical welfare schemes. Even if they are critical welfare schemes, it is not being implemented. This more happens at the state level. When it comes to the central level, the schemes are better implemented. I'm not saying that it is implemented 100% better, but the implementation compared to state is better. This is what we have seen over the past. So dilution, the code on social security allows self-assessment by employers. Now this is again a huge problem. Now earlier there was fixed that the employers need to give this amount of cess. Now code on social security allows self-assessment by employers, that they will self-assess that they need to pay the cess or not. Obviously, who would be thinking of giving extra 1 to 2% of cess? So reducing cess collection rate and interest penalties. So this could further erode funding for welfare programs. So already the amount of money is unspent, and with this, self-assessment rule, many employers would be trying to curtail or trying to find loopholes in the system or try to cheat the government to not give this cess. So already idle funds are sitting, and in future you might not even have proper funds to do this welfare scheme. So this is like a double salvo against the workers. First, the money is not being utilized, and in future they might not even have money to spend on workers. So currently we have a problem, and in future we might have a problem that the funds are not being utilized. So the act previously mandated statutory entitlement of workers, but court shifts to optional faculties dependent on union government's prescription. So this is a major problem which is there. So what are the recommendations? Centralized system to monitor. This is exactly why I was saying, whenever it comes under center, like direct direct account transfer and all this, whenever center comes, the accountability increases, and whenever most of these schemes are dependent upon state or state is being asked, many times corruption happens, or many times there is no accountability, and even if funds are collected, no utilization happens, as you see in this current news also. So strengthen enforcement mechanism to prevent cess evasion by the employers. So enforcement mechanism is important, and I personally feel that this self-assessment on on social things which we are talking about, it will not work. Most of the employers will try to evade it. So evasion of cess will also happen. So if we want to avoid the evasion of this cess, strengthen enforcement mechanism, centralized system would be very important. Mandate timely disbursement of welfare benefits, which is very important. Like specifically at the time of COVID-19 pandemic, which happened, where many states said they might had less funds or they needed to spend on medical and other things. Enhance statutory provision for workers' welfare under the code on social security. So this is the focus which we need to do, and the collection of the money which has happened through this test, it has to be implemented. Center can look it in and help the states in implementing these schemes. Otherwise, there is no point of collecting this amount of fund, like 70,740 crore, when it is just sitting. It just shows inefficiency in implementing welfare measures for construction workers, and how they are not even getting the basic things, accommodation and latrines, for example. So cess evasion, which we need to sue, which can be done by employers. Ensuring transparency and strengthening the welfare mechanism is something which we need to see. Let's come to the question. The cess rate under the act is fixed at 5% of the total construction cost. No, it's not 5%, it is 1 to 2%. The act mandates the provision of free temporary accommodation, drinking water, latrines for construction workers. Second point is correct. Most states have fully implemented the welfare provision under the act. Most states have fully, no, they have not fully implemented. That's third statement is also wrong. B is your correct answer to this question. Now let's move to the next important news. Stung by Pooja Khedkar scam, governments amend civil services exam rules. So Sharan, some of the important notification changes which we are covering, they'll come in this news also. And I'll probably create one small video also around of a short which will help you what are the major changes. So in response to Pooja Khedkar scam, the government has amended the civil services, which was very much expected. So we saw a lot of cheating which happened in the NEET examination. Then we saw Pooja Khedkar case, how the disability rules and how fake certificates were generated to cheat UPSC and government. And eventually these kind of changes were expected. We were expecting, generally most of these changes which have come, it used to happen at the main stage, but this time what they have done is they have changed the rules that most of the certificates and DAF, CADAN and everything which was asked, it was after the prelims when you would have qualified and when you were filling the mains form. But this time they are mostly asking about this, that you need to fill up this before the prelims examination. So most stringent laws have been applied into this. So Civil Service Examination Rules 2025 introducing stricter guidelines for candidates for the preliminary stage. Changes aim to enhance transparency and prevent misuse of reservation benefits and attempt limit, which we saw in the Pooja Khedkar case, how she cheated the system. So mandatory online submission of documents, educational certificates is there. So this is now mandated. You will have to put your educational certificate. Caste and disability certificates will also need to be put. Okay. And third is other claims like date of birth, service preferences and category details like SC, ST, OBC, EWS, PWBD and ex-servicemen certificates. These also needs to be put up. And if you also need to put the certificate, for example, if you are coming from OBC non-creamy layer, then they have given 3 years. So they need to see your financial documents related to those 3 years and then they need to put up. So this is something which you need to put in your form now. Educational certificate, caste and disability certificates, other claims like date of birth, service preference, category details, SC, ST, OBC, EWS, and failure to upload will eventually lead to cancellation of your candidature. So you need to put these important papers. So before putting, make sure that you have all these correct papers and documents. So previously documents occurred only after qualifying the mains examination. Okay. Service and cadre preferences earlier submitted after the mains are now required at the preliminary stage. That is what I was trying to say. After the mains, not before. Once you clear the mains, then you had to put, not before the mains. So correcting myself. So after the mains, you had to put required at the preliminary stage and only after qualifying the mains examination. Now it used to happen after mains. Now they are asking majority of those documents early now on. So this is a major change which has happened. So this is the case because of which the UPSC has done these changes. So Pooja Khedkar was a probationary or IAS officer. You must have seen lot of videos and content came at this point of time. How her mother was carrying a gun and she was asking for a car with with the red beeper and something. You must have heard all that news had come and she had some problems with the senior officers. This was all in the news. So this can be incorrect also, but most of the news channels were covering, and eventually we got to know that she had misused the, she should have given 9 attempts, but she gave 12 attempts. She created fake documents and fake certificates to give civil services examination. So she appeared 12 times in the examination, exceeding the limit of 9 attempts, gained reservation benefits using a fake disability certificate in the 2022 examination, and eventually her lies were caught, and currently, currently she is on the bail, but she has been, discharged from these services. So scam was covered in June 2024. It made the entire headlines. Then we also had that NEET scam and NEET cheating. So around in the last years, we have seen a lot of focus has gone on the examination, how examination should be conducted. So I'm also talking about NEET because that was also a huge amount of, when the results of NEET had come, so huge furore had happened on the NEET examination, then Pooja Khedkar case. So that is why how examination are conducted is being changing, and similarly which we are seeing in the UPSC also. So Khedkar was discharged from the services, faces criminal cases and is currently on bail. So Department of Personnel and Training, they are also doing inquiry on 5 more person, 5 IAS and 1 IRS official, because they might have used disability reservation. The inquiry re-examines their disability parameters. January 22nd notification emphasizes stricter gatekeeping at the preliminary stage. So they are putting gatekeeping, they are putting the checks and balances, or rather checks in the starting only, so that none of these fake people or cheaters, they enter the system to give the examination, or chances of getting hold or chances of getting people who might cheat the system are very high to be caught by the government or by the UPSC machinery. That is why this gatekeeping is being done at the start of the system only. So gatekeeping at the preliminary stage will reduce chances of forgery and misrepresentation. So this forgery and representation should be caught at the early stages only. So this year notification is around 979 vacancies. Examination recruits for 23 services, IAS, IFS and IPS, and this 979 vacancies are for civil services. Indian Foreign Services also has more than 100 vacancies. I think if I'm correct, around more than 150, the number which I'm remembering is correct. So good number of vacancies. Enhanced transparency, mandatory document submission ensures better verification and deters fraudulent activity. So this should have been done eventually. This should have been done, I think, 5 or 10 years back, but eventually this has done because Pooja Khedkar is one case which, you know, UPSC did say that in the last few years there's only 5 or 10 cases like this, but probably this is my personal opinion. I beg to differ. There might have been many cases like this. I have a lot of friends in civil services who used to tell that, you know, many of these people who have come, you know, they used to fake on their physical disability, and you know, and they became a joke only. But now if you see, there's so much of cheating might have happened, but again, this is information from my friends and sources which might not be, you know, proven in a court. Okay, so but anyways, I feel system might have been cheated earlier also, because cases like Pooja Khedkar, they get this confidence because somebody in the past might have done this. Okay, so must meticulous in documents. So candidates should be, you know, very sharp in putting their documents. Otherwise, this problem might happen with them. So the government commitment to ensuring integrity and fairness continues. It's a good step. So Pooja Khedkar scam has highlighted systematic loopholes in the civil services examination process. Discuss the reforms introduced to address such issues and evaluate their effectiveness and ensuring transparency. In examination, they might not put a Pooja Khedkar name exactly. They might say that what kind of mechanism has been put in examination to make it better. Then in this answer, if it is not specifically talking about civil services, you might also need to bring the example of NEET or some other example worldwide where better steps have been taken to conduct examination. Okay, so this is something which you need to see. Okay. 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 Moving forward. So the IPM test series 1.0 2026 is starting on 25th January 2025. It will include more than, it will include more than 100 tests, 106 tests to be precise, prelims 54 tests and mains 52 tests. And for all the details, you can call on the numbers for, for the conduction and everything, and what would be the focus of all these tests, and every detail you can get on this number, or you can also scan this QR code which will give you the entire information regarding the integrated prelims cum test series. It's called IPM test series, integrated prelims cum test series. Now let's come to the editorial. Before, okay, that is India's winding road to end TB. Okay. Now, in prelims decode, in UPSC, sorry, the Hindu decode, we every day talk about UPSC prelims impact. Today we'll talk about tuberculosis. Yesterday also we had covered tuberculosis. It starts with the bacterial infection. If you remembered, yesterday we had done National Health Mission. In that we spoke about what is sickle cell anemia, what is maternal mortality rate, and also tuberculosis. So it is a infectious disease caused by a bacteria, that is Bacillus mycobacterium tuberculosis bacteria. This has also been asked in the UPSC examination earlier, which is the bacteria because of which TB happens. It most often affects lungs and is known as pulmonary TB. Now, apart from this PTB or pulmonary TB, there are other TBs also, which is called extra pulmonary TB. The examples of which are gastrointestinal TB, skeletal TB, and liver TB. So it affects other areas of TB. So if a question is asked, there is only one type of TB, no, there are pulmonary TB and extra pulmonary TB, which the examples can be skeletal TB, liver TB, and gastrointestinal TB. Now, the good part is that TB, when you talk about tuberculosis, it is preventable and curable. So there are multiple tests around it, and there is medicines also around it. So first of all, how the transmission happens? The transmission happens through air. If a person suffering from this sneezes, and what he sneezes, you are inhaling that. So it is by air. When an infected person coughs, speaks, laughs, sings or sneezes. Common symptoms are prolonged cough, sometimes with the blood also. This we had covered yesterday also. Chest pain, weakness, fatigue, weight loss, fever and night sweats. Test for identification. Now this is very, very important. Exactly whatever you see on the previous slide and this slide is absolutely important from UPSC prelims perspective. So test for identification, expert MTB is one of the tests. RIF Ultra and Truant assays. These are some of the tests which are used to identify. So these are the lab tests. Okay, which are the three tests? These are the three lab tests which can be done. Expert, MTB, RIF Ultra and Truant assays are for test identification of TB or tuberculosis. Now, once tuberculosis is identified and say you have TB, so then there is treatment. There is treatment available. It's preventable and curable. Some of the common medication include isoniazid, rifampicin. This is very popular, rifampicin. Then ethambutol, parazenamide, and then is streptomycin. You must have heard of streptomycin a lot. So streptomycin, rifampicin, isoniazid, and these are certain medicines which can be used for curing your TB. Okay. Rest I've already told you what is transmission and everything. What are the common substances of tuberculosis. Now, moving towards the editorial. So tuberculosis is the leading infectious disease killer globally of 2023. So India had basically put some targets in front of it, that is ending TB targets, 90% reduction in TB deaths, 80% reduction in new cases, zero catastrophe cost by 2025. So we were doing very good in the starting times, but during the COVID 2020, the entire bus or the train and the efforts to move towards curtailing or achieving these targets of TB, this got derailed. And we are picking it up, but the pace has not been that much which we want to do. So as per the National Health Mission, we have worked on the tuberculosis. Number of deaths from the TB has reduced if we compare to 2015 numbers, but still a huge amount of effort needs to be put. And India, the major problem is this drug resistance TB. Number of patients of drug resistant TB are very high in India. So this is some area which India needs to look on. So India contributes 26% of global TB cases, faces challenges like drug resistance TB, which is also called DRTB. DR stands for drug, TB you already know. So drug resistance TB and TB related deaths. So on some parameters we have done wonderfully, but the target which India has put in front of it, that will require a huge amount of effort, time and obviously good governance in implementing the schemes. So high risk groups include migrant workers, minors, undernourished population. So we were talking about those infrastructure workers. They are not getting more than 70,000 of funds is lying. They are not getting rooms. They are not getting latrines. All those things which we've already spoken about in the previous news, that more than 70,000 crore of fund is sitting, which was collected through cess for the infrastructure workers. So if you are not giving them good habitable conditions, if that is not given, eventually it will lead to this tuberculosis problem also. So undernourished population, contributing factors, silicosis, overcrowding, uncontrolled diabetes, poor healthcare access. So first of all, these people don't even have money. Second, when you want tuberculosis drugs, they are very expensive. Third, these tests are majorly in different cities or in tier 2 or tier 3 cities. Tier 2 or tier 1 cities. So in their villages or wherever they are working, these tests are not available. Even the test is available, it is very expensive in nature. Drugs are not available, and most of the time free drugs are not available, which eventually they get, they start, which can be cured in the, which can be prevented in the early stages of TB. The person starts suffering and eventually he becomes a TB patient. So migrant often interrupt treatment due to mobility, making healthcare trafficking difficult. Now, because migrant workers keep shifting. For example, if a migrant worker is say working in some Dehradun area of Uttarakhand. Now from Dehradun, if he is shifting to say he is shifting in Bangalore. Okay. Now if a common card is being made for him, that the card which can work in Dehradun, the same card can work in Bangalore. This is the system which we can create. Otherwise, what is happening is that if he's shifting from Dehradun and coming to Bangalore as a migrant worker or an infrastructure worker, then the entire medication which he was taking, it goes for zero, and whatever effort was done by him or the doctors associated with him is also null and void. So this is something that interrupt treatment, which we need to find solution to this. So India achieved 95% treatment initiation for notified thanks to the wonderful scheme, that is National Tuberculosis Elimination Program. So NTEP has done wonderful work. 2023 supplies shortages of critical drugs is an issue. Catastrophic health expenses, I've already told you, because of unavailability of free drugs, because these migrant workers, they don't have so much of money that they can spend on test and then on drugs, because see, these people are looking for day-to-day money. If they don't work, they don't have money to even live for a single day. So asking them that you save and then you start putting, it's a huge task until unless the standard of living of the workers increase. And we just saw the, in the last news I was talking about, more than 70,000 crore is lying in sitting idle funds with the state to implement the workers welfare scheme. That is not being implemented. If it starts getting implemented, so lot of money which worker spends on his food or his stay, that can be eliminated, and which they might be able to put on his health. So 24% of TB cases are extrapulmonary, affecting organs like brain, bones and kidneys. EPTB is underdiagnosed due to weak systems and reliance on specialist diagnosis. Now, how would these people get specialist, diagnosis? And where they are working, is specialist diagnosis available? Forget about specialist diagnosis, they don't even have general practitioners. General practitioners not available who can at least identify in the early days, and the TB can be prevented. So this is a huge complex problem of infrastructure and doctors also, which need to be rectified, that if we want to bring the TB down. Okay, so diagnostic molecular testing technologies like CB-NAT and TrueNAT is legal. So molecular testing like TrueNAT and CB-NAT are needed for identifying the tuberculosis, but they are available in tier 2 or tier 1 cities. So if the construction is happening at a place, even if it is in tier 2, but your construction happening at some corner of tier 2, you will need funds, you will need money to go to that hospital, and then these tests are very expensive. So these workers might not be able to afford it. So then the other problem is that issue of shortage trained staff, cartridge supplies and high cost of test. Many places the staff is not available, that even if you want to happen a laboratory test center out there, but the staff is not available which can put these tests into implementation. Private practitioner frequently prescribes antibiotics without notifying TB, which impacts the NTP's database, because once they take the antibiotics, sometimes they get to know, okay, he's not having a TB. But once the effect of those antibiotics is gone, which we get to know that this person was actually suffering for TB, this database of NTEP is getting disturbed because of this. Okay. So NTP faces shortage in trained personnel. The topmost organization and program which is working on tuberculosis, it itself is facing problem in trained personnel. So forget about the others. So what we can do? So we can also do something called community participation. So there are two good examples. One which was done by Idukki district in Kerala with Kudambashri. It was a women's self-help network achieving TB elimination target through community advocacy, talking to each other and helping. Similar kind of thing was done in Vietnam also. So this example of Vietnam and Idukki, or Vietnam and Kerala, can be taken and implemented in pilot projects in different areas of the state, with obviously not exactly copy pasting it, but which is relevant to each state. So we can take examples of Idukki or Kerala's example and Vietnam's example and implement, which will help in succeeding against TB. Now, good thing is that India's TB related deaths declined by 24% since 2015, and case notification reached records high. So number of deaths have come down and number of people reporting TB cases are high. So this is good thing, because once people report, then only you can cure them. Next is recommendation for improvement, strengthening multi-sectoral action, that is living condition, dust exposure, that needs to be curtailed. Better living condition needs to be given, dust exposure needs to be reduced, undernutrition, more nutrition needs to be given, improving diagnostic access, that these people need to have diagnostic access, that the labs where they can go for tests at a very reasonable or at a zero cost, which I will say. Enhanced drug supply chains, because when the drug supply is stopped, these people are not able to afford very high priced drugs. So free drugs needs to be given. Increase workforce capacity, invest in training healthcare staff, frontline workers for better implementation. adopt active cases finding, need to find active cases where the active cases of tuberculosis are there, and then to prevent or help them. So in conclusion, achieving 2025 end TB target seems unlikely. Progress in case notification and TB related deaths provides hope. So the good is that TB related deaths and people putting the active cases, that will help because we will be able to identify and cure them. And community driven approaches can also be taken, which we see be it Vietnam or for that matter Kerala. So this is the question which we have. India continues to lead the global burden of tuberculosis despite ambitious goals and policies. Discuss the key challenges and suggest measures to achieve the end TB targets by 2025. So you can follow this news, this question, and I've added some pointers for your answers also. So in the extra mile you have this: is France influence in West Africa over? Because the influence or West Africa, it is so a lot of Russia had a lot of colonies and ports and for that matter even the military bases there. But not Russia, I beg your pardon, France had a lot of bases and military ports and everything in most of these places, majorly army bases and military bases. But now France is being replaced by Russia. So it's a wonderful article, you can go through this. You can also follow ICANN of Sapna ma'am. Now, thank you very much. I hope you did like the lecture and learn from it. And we'll meet up tomorrow at the same time. Take care and Jai Hind.